In the wind and rain across Northern Ireland, I think feeling fairly disappointing for the time of year. So as we move into the evening, it's going to be a fine end to the day really across southern parts of the country. Some late spells of sunshine to enjoy here, and again in the sunshine I think it still will feel fairly warm. But as we move further north, we start to bump up into this area of cloud and rain. The rain quite heavy for a time across Northern Ireland. Some rain also moving into parts of Cumbria and western Scotland, where the far east of Scotland may well just see some late spells of sunshine, but this rain will push its way eastwards as we go through the course of the night. So quite a wet night to come across the northern half of the UK. That rain actually intensifying as we go through the course of the night across western Scotland. A warning will come in force during Monday here because there could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads, so there is a risk of some disruption. Further south, it's a fairly quiet night with some clearing skies and temperatures falling down to mid-teens, maybe down to the low double figures across the north. So we start Monday off, which is a bank holiday across Scotland, on a fairly wet note here. Also some further rain for Northern Ireland too. But further south, best of sunshine will be across the eastern half of England. Further west, there'll be a bit more in the way of cloud in the sky. But where we do see the sunshine, it's going to be feeling fairly hot. Temperatures potentially reaching 27 or 28 degrees down towards the southeast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very very good morning to you. Hope you're well and enjoying your weekend so far. Welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Ben Leo. Lots going on this morning, including the latest on the Tory leadership race, with Priti Patel bearing all in the papers about the threat from Nigel Farage. Also, the courts fast-tracking prosecutions in a bid to quash the growing riots that have been taking place across Britain. And I'll share with you some more of my chat with Eric Trump, the son of would-be US President Donald Trump, when I met him in Aberdeen yesterday. Elsewhere, as Russia has released several US prisoners in a recent diplomatic exchange, highlighting ongoing efforts to resolve international tensions, could this be a significant step towards improved bilateral relations? Military historian Peter Caddick-Adams will be here to share his thoughts on what this means for US-Russian relations. Meanwhile, tensions have intensified between Israel and Iran in the past week. That's after the killing of a Hamas chief in Iran. And that came, of course, after Israel retaliated against the Hezbollah attack in the Golan Heights, which killed 12 Israeli children. The Israeli spokesman for the Office of the Prime Minister, David Mencer, will be joining us live from Israel with the latest. And, of course, arts editor of the Daily Express, Stefan Kyriasis, will be here to tell us all and educate me about his latest theatrical adventures. But before all that, your news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning. 1 minute past 11, our top stories this hour. Police warn further violence is likely after at least 90 people were arrested yesterday as protests took place across England and Northern Ireland. Many towns and cities saw clashes between anti-immigration demonstrators and counter-protesters, with police officers attacked and injured. It comes after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack at a dance club in Southport on Monday. Among the arrests, 14 were made in Bristol, 11 in Liverpool and 20 in Lancashire, amid reports of looting and the setting of fires. Speaking earlier on GB News, former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley didn't mince his words.
No matter what somebody's concerns are, if you pick up a brick or you pick up a bottle and you try it at a police officer, you are an idiot. End of story. And unfortunately, we faced yet another evening of violence when more police officers were injured. Something quite dramatic is going to have to happen here because I see no sign at the moment of this unrest diminishing. In fact, I see it escalating and spreading.
Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick is urging the Prime Minister to cancel his planned holiday and get a grip on this situation. Many more arrests have been promised in the coming days, as the PM said the police have his full support to take action against extremists. Robert Jenrick says Sir Keir must stay and tackle the problem.
Well, look, I think it would be completely wrong for the Prime Minister to go on holiday whilst parts of Britain are burning. This is a very serious situation, and we need the Prime Minister to be leading the country. The police need our full support, and they need to know that he is there supporting them, making sure that this situation is being handled from the very top.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer has accused protesters of attempting to sow hate by intimidating communities. Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe says he needs to listen to the protesters' concerns.
What we need is an honest debate. I don't have a golden bullet for years and years of the elite's mismanagement of our immigration policy, but we've got to have a frank and honest discussion about it. There isn't always a sort of one-line answer to these things. It's extremely complex. But what we can't go on doing is undermining the foundations of this great country and not listening to the people who are now concerned about it, because they're right to be concerned. They've got every right to be concerned about what's happening to their country.
The public is being warned not to approach a suspect after a man was fatally stabbed in North London. 33-year-old Kamar Williams from the Isle of Dogs is believed to be connected to the murder of 53-year-old Derek Neil Thomas on the 30th of July. Mr Thomas died from a stab wound to the chest. The Met Police arrested a 30-year-old woman on Saturday on suspicion of assisting an offender. A 66-year-old woman has died and 3 other people were seriously wounded after being stabbed by a Palestinian attacker in the centre of Israel. The stabbings took place during morning rush hour in the city of Holon, just outside of Tel Aviv. The other victims were 2 senior citizens and a young man. Israeli authorities say the suspect was shot dead by police. In the United States, Florida is bracing itself as tropical storm Debbie is expected to turn into a hurricane before hitting landfall this evening. Governor Ron DeSantis has called up 3,000 National Guard and placed most of Florida's cities and counties under emergency orders. Evacuations are taking place in various places. The National Hurricane Center has described it as a life-threatening situation. Winds are expected to build to 70 miles per hour and waves as high as 2 metres. Former US President Donald Trump's son Eric has accused the US media of biased reporting when it comes to Vice President Kamala Harris. Here he is speaking to GB News' Ben Leo in Aberdeenshire.
Yeah, it's funny, the media was mocking her. They spent the last 4 years mocking her, and then all of a sudden, Biden's forced out, and all of a sudden she walks on water. It's really an amazing thing. But generally speaking, in our country, people don't trust the media anymore. They don't. For the last 3.5 years, they've talked about how Biden was a vibrant, articulate, well-spoken, healthy man. He walks out on stage at a debate, and everybody realizes that that's just not true. And they knew it wasn't true, but he walks on a stage and it just reinforces the fact that it wasn't true. They realized two things: that Kamala Harris was lying to them, and that the media was lying to them.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. I'll be back in a bit.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Ray, and good morning to you at home. Welcome back. I'm joined also now by Matthew Larser, the former head of broadcast at the Labour Party, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and the journalist and author Hilary Freeman. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday.
And to
We've
you.
made it through another week.
Absolutely.
Lots going on today. Lots going on all week. This, Matthew, you know this. Silly season is the time when Parliament's normally out. There's no stories. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel for news. But the last 3 or 4 weeks has been insane.
Absolutely.
As far as the news cycle goes.
It just hasn't stopped since the election, really, has it? I think everybody thought that you'd had the election, bit of the new government, and then everybody would have a sort of well-deserved summer where either you weren't making, people weren't producing the news or having to consume it. And instead we've had what a grim news cycle we're in at the moment after the events in Southport, the riots, but plus the international stuff, which you're also going to be talking about. So, in terms of the government, they literally can't be able to take a holiday because, quite rightly, they're busy dealing with what's happening on the streets.
Of course, so much going on. We will touch on that in just a second, but first of all, the government are getting themselves together. Also, the Conservative Party, Priti Patel, of course, who's thrown her hat in the ring for the leadership race. She's given a very interesting interview to the Daily Telegraph, or the Sunday Telegraph today, saying, Nigel Farage is a friend, but I will not allow him to destroy the Conservative Party. Chloe Dobbs, is this the woman to lead the Tories to a revival?
I'm not sure, because I think that statement just puts the blame for the failure of the Conservative Party on Nigel Farage rather than the Conservative Party themselves, which I think shows her attitude. This is, another Home Secretary who will probably complain that immigration is too high, but she didn't really do anything about it, did she? The Tories need to take some responsibility, and Suella dropped out of the leadership race, saying that the Tories would not listen to her diagnosis about where they had gone wrong. And from what Priti Patel is saying here, it sounds like she just wants to put the blame on the Reform Party rather than actually have some humility and admit where they went wrong. So I'm not too impressed, to be honest.
Hilary, what's your take? Do the Tories feel like they have a divine right to rule? Do they still not get why they lost the election?
I think the Tories at the moment are in such a mess that they're almost an irrelevance. It doesn't really matter who becomes the leader because it's going to take an awful lot of time for them to actually regroup and decide who they want to be and where they want to go. And I think that the blaming Farage, you can blame Farage, but he's just an opportunist, isn't he? He came in there and he could see the weakness and he took advantage of it. I don't think you can blame him. I think the Tories have been a mess for years.
And in terms of the leadership race for the Conservative Party, what do you make of Priti? You've got Mel Stride, of course, James Cleverly, the former Home Secretary, Priti, Suella ruled herself out, Robert Jenrick, of course, who's been on Camilla's show this morning. Who's your hot take for the leadership?
I think probably Kemi. I think she brings something a bit more fresh. She's younger. She's not kind of soiled by being associated with the Sunak government in the same way. So I think, for me.
Matthew Larser, as the Labour man gracing our presence this morning. Who do you think Labour would fear most out of that cohort?
Well, I think Labour would fear one of the kind of nice chaps, really. So I think probably cleverly, oddly, I think Stride, who's sort of slightly been written off. He had his moment in the election when he was forced onto the airwaves because nobody else would, morning after morning during the election campaign. But I think, Keir Starmer isn't somebody that people warm to, particularly on a personal level, even if they respect him on a professional level. And I think sort of a more relatable figure, Penny Mordaunt, obviously before she lost her seat, but a sort of nice chap like Cleverly, as it were, who everybody likes in Westminster. He's very popular, would steady the ship and would be quite personable.
Is that enough though, just to be a nice chap?
Well, I don't think whoever wins the leadership
a nice jolly good fellow.
Well, I think whoever wins the leadership this time may not even be the leader of the election. Certainly isn't going to be the leader to lead them back into government. So I think they need a steadying of the ship.
Yeah.
The problem at the moment is the whole campaign is being defined not by what they think about the future of the Tory party, but about their relations with another party in the case of reform. They should also be worried about the 60, 70 Tory MPs who lost their seats to the Lib Dems.
So hang on a minute, you think there'll be another Tory leadership race after this? As Brenda from Bristol would say, another one?
I know, quite. What is this, the fifth one we'll have had? I get confused in so many years.
Absolutely. We've had so many prime ministers.
It's extraordinary. I mean, you just don't know because you don't know what direction the party's going to take. You don't know what outside events are going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with reform in terms of how dominant they become. But I think in the short term, what they need is a steady hand on the tiller.
I don't think that they want someone who's just steady and boring because... I mean, look at how much reform surged in the polls when Nigel Farage came in as leader. Very clearly, someone with personality is what the public were absolutely desperate for.
Well, look at Boris. Boris got buyed on pure personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I think people
are not going to be excited enough by the Conservative Party to go back to them after voting reform if they just put in some boring person like Robert Jenrick or James Cleverly who...
Well, hang on. Hillary says the public is sick of that. We don't want characters.
They're sick of personality politics. They want, real, proper politicians.
Get so many votes.
Well,
do you genuinely think it was in spite of his personality and not because of?
Well, I think there's an awful lot of people who vote for him that actually vote for him because they were sick of the Tories rather than because they actually saw what his policies were and wanted to see them through. But he was never going to become Prime Minister, was he? There's a very big difference.
Hillary, out of this bunch on the screen now, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride, Priti Patel and Kemi Badenoch, who is the biggest character there? Who's the most Boris-esque, if we're talking just on pure personality?
Oh, gosh.
It's got to be Priti, hasn't it?
I suppose it has to be, yes. Yeah. She's the only one that... I
worry that if Kemi's personality, which is obviously she's very feisty, very intelligent, but if she's pretty abrasive, and whether the public want that abrasiveness at the moment from a party that they're struggling to listen to.
Well, Matthew, you mentioned Sir Keir Starmer there. His net approval rating has plummeted in 2 weeks from 19% to just 3%.
Wow.
Of course, in the wake of these horrible scenes going on across the country, the riots following on from the Southport killings. What's going on there? Has the government got a problem on their hands?
I think the key thing with any situation like this is people need to feel the government has got a grip. That's the whoever's in power, the government needs to be seen to be acting. Even if people are in areas which aren't affected by the disorder, it's just unnerving to everybody. So I think what you're going to see is there's talk today of 24-hour court sittings so that they can process people who are arrested as soon as possible. The police are saying they're going to be larger number of arrests, from across all of the days of violence they've been following up in the CCTV footage, etc. So lots of action, lots of the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary out there showing that they are taking action.
Chloe, the Sunday Telegraph reports courts will sit for 24 hours to fast-track sentencing under government plans to crack down on, quote-unquote, far-right riots that swept Britain on Saturday.
Well, I think that on the one hand, it's a good thing that Keir Starmer is making it look as though he wants to bring some law and order to this country when people are absolutely desperate for it. But on the other hand, I felt like he really dug himself a deeper hole by going and doing that press conference when taking a stand against far-right protesters, when he did absolutely nothing, when we had, the riots in Hare Hills in Leeds, when we had the Whitechapel riots. It's like he only cares when it's people on the right who are protesting, and that just fuels the narrative that we've got a government that doesn't listen to the concerns in this country. The reason why people are out rioting is because they're fed up of two-tier policing, because they're fed up of a government that only attacks the right. And
Matthew's shaking his head with a scowl on his face.
People can protest because of that. The reason people are rioting is because they're criminals who are destroying their own communities. In Walton and Liverpool, they set fire to a library that had just been opened, public investment, which is all about getting people back into work. So it's just complete nonsense.
I think that's absolutely disgusting.
In fact, people was out there condemning the Hare Hills riots in Leeds. She was there the morning after as the clean-up was happening, saying that all the anybody who's guilty of criminality would be chased up. It's absolutely anybody. What the government needs to show is whoever causes disorder on our streets, we can't have mob rule.
And I think that should be the case, but clearly a much harder stance has been taken in response to right-wing.
Well, I think that this always happens. There's always a very tough stance. I remember the poll tax riots. I remember the 2011 riots. People are processed very quickly. They get very big sentences that are disproportionate. And I think what happens then is that it almost creates martyrs, and it doesn't actually deal with the issues that are causing the rioting. Yes, people need to be jailed if they are going out being, anarchists. But this is not a reaction. These riots are not a reaction to two-tier policing. For me, it seems like it's a coordinated attempt to just cause havoc. It's not spontaneous at all.
I did feel Sir Keir Starmer missed a trick in his speech by not mentioning how, for example, as a parent, how he was going to keep kids safe. Because all this stems, of course, back to the Southport riots and the tragic death of those little girls and other girls injured.
And it's offensive to those families that this has happened. I feel terrible for them.
The riots?
Yes. In their children's names. This is not what they want.
We certainly need to look at knife crime. We need to, as the court case goes ahead and we learn what knife was used, etc. We need to, look at availability of knives, which is a constant issue, and I think should be right up the government's priority list. But the first priority now, as of this weekend, is getting a grip on the streets, is supporting the police, and making clear that whatever you think your cause is, as we saw Peter Blexley, one of our great ex-police officers there, saying anybody who causes disorder on the streets needs to be pounced on. And that was what the government will be doing. Supporting the police. That's the #1 message.
Yeah, and no matter your political persuasion, I think we have to all agree violence on the streets solves nothing.
Absolutely.
We need to condemn it all, whether it's the far right, whether it's not the far right, whether it's
The thing is, people are resorting to violence because they don't feel like they're listened to. They feel like they can't voice their concerns about radical Islam on the rise because they're worried they're going to be called a racist and called an Islamophobe. That has to be addressed, and I think that Keir Starmer just branding everyone far-right thugs doesn't really help that. It's only going to make problems worse long-term. And they need to solve the immigration problem.
I'm just going to... I met with Eric Trump, the son of Donald Trump, yesterday at Trump International Golf Course in Aberdeen, and we had a long chat about David Lammy, the Labour cabinet, the comments they'd made about him. But I also asked him about Harry and Meghan and the release of Harry's now controversial visa application, where he's accused of lying about previous drug use. This is what Mr Trump told me yesterday.
On the royals, of course, Harry and Meghan, you're sort of taking custody of our Harry at the moment. Joe Biden apparently was protecting the release of his visa information. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the row that was going on whether he lied or not about taking previous drug use on his visa. And Joe Biden was accused of protecting the release of that visa. If and when your father is re-elected, will he be open to pushing for the release of that visa? And if it is found he was lying on his application, Prince Harry, would he be happy to have him in the country still?
Listen, I don't know. I don't want to get into royals, and what I can tell you is my father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else, and that's a very sacred kind of institution, and you can happily have those two back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here, but I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But in terms of what that institution looks like, in terms of the palace, Buckingham, one of the most incredible places I've ever been. I've been to a few state dinners there, and it's beautiful and should be cherished by this country because it's something that has such elegance and history and longevity. And it's such part of the brand of really what the UK is, and I do think it should be cherished, and I think it's beautiful. And listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have spoiled apples in every orchard, but the institution of the royal family is beautiful, and it's something that's really actually admired by a lot of Americans, and I think that should be protected.
So, Hillary, Eric Trump calling Harry and Meghan bad apples. And you can have them back if you want. Take them back.
Well, I mean, I don't want them back.
What's your issue with them?
My issue with them is that they made it very clear that they didn't want to work in this country, that they wanted to get out. You know, I think Meghan didn't expected to have a very different role. She thought she was going to be a celebrity. She didn't think she had to work. She didn't like Britain. They've left. You know, why would we want them back?
I don't think they want them either. Matthew Larser, as the lefty on the panel, it's Meghan's birthday today. Have you wished her well?
Well, happy birthday, Meghan. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that they really just are, you know, they've lost an empire and they're looking for a role, as it were, and they've lost a country. And so I don't know what they'd do if they came back. I mean, I think what they actually need to do is get a proper job. Meghan needs to go back to acting and he needs to find something to do. I'm not quite sure what he's qualified for.
Chloe, Eric Trump didn't rule out his father deporting Harry if it was found that he had lied on his visa.
Well, I mean, if we have to take him back for that reason, then I guess we have to take him back. But I definitely don't really want those lot back. So long as he's still with Meghan. It is very clear to me that Meghan is the one who's been taking the lead on trying to tarnish the reputation of the royal family and trying to get fame and fortune out of it. And he just, I mean, I'd say he's whipped. He just does whatever he is told by her. So I think time away from Meghan would be good for him. If he comes back with another woman, maybe we'll take him.
They've got nowhere to live now, of course, either.
No. Yes, they're homeless here.
Yeah, they're homeless.
House is taken
begging outside Buckingham Palace.
Well, Frogmore Cottage has been empty.
Yeah.
According to the latest royal accounts, it's been empty for the best part of 12, 13 months.
And do you remember Canada said no to them as well? So they're running out of options. Australia and New Zealand? Maybe New Zealand will have them.
I mean, they've probably got
Australia
enough money to buy an island somewhere.
Well, I mean, when they were trying to find something to do with the Duke of Windsor after he'd married Mrs Simpson in the war, they sent him to Bermuda as governor, so you never know.
It was a fascinating chat with Eric Trump. We spoke about not just Harry and Meghan, you know, that was just a passing question, I guess, just interested to hear what he had to say. But I relayed the comments, particularly of David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary of previous years, about his father, saying he was a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath and whatever else he said. And also comments from other Labour cabinet members, Ed Miliband, as I think maybe he called him an imbecile, possibly, or was that someone else? And he addressed those comments. The full clip is on YouTube. We'll play some more later on during the show. Do you think, though, Trump is in for a good chance at regaining the White House, Chloe, this summer?
Yeah.
This winter?
Absolutely. I mean, Kamala Harris is an absolute joke. I mean, she might do a bit better than Biden because she actually has a working brain still. But, I mean,
really?
Somewhat. She still has some memory.
And Trump does?
Exactly.
No, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, no, but, I mean, he doesn't have a working brain.
No, I think that he does.
Donald?
I think he's actually a pretty smart guy. I think sometimes he puts on a bit of a character, kind of like how Boris does, acting like a little bit of a buffoon because it's funny and it adds personality. But he's a very smart businessman, and he's definitely a heck of a lot smarter than Kamala Harris. He's just running on a DEI.
I have to say, people who say Donald Trump is thick, I mean, whether you like him or not...
I don't think he's thick. You know, he's not an idiot. But I don't think he's running on all cylinders. I don't think he's...
He was a multi-millionaire businessman in his own right after a very modest $1 million loan from his father. Most people would have blown that apart. He then became a TV star in his own right. Again, another feat that most people would love as a life achievement. And then he beat the odds to become the US president against Hillary Clinton. You can't say that he's not all there.
I think America, the cult of personality is far even bigger than it is here in politics. I think, and also the amount of money he had. You buy your way to be president there in a way that our political system is completely different. I honestly think he had a lot of luck, and he was used by a lot of people who wanted to put him there. I think. He's not stupid in the sense that I mean, I don't know what his IQ is, whatever measure of stupidity you want to use, but you listen to him talk. Half the time he can't string an argument together. He just talks rubbish.
OK, well, half of America loves him.
Well, half of America probably...
50-50, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
OK, well, I'm going to share some more of my chat with Eric Trump later in the show, but for now, thanks to Matthew, Chloe and Hillary, who will join us again in the next hour. Elsewhere coming up, after US prisoners were released by Russia this week in an exchange, is this a sign for improved relations with Vladimir Putin? Military historian Peter Caddick-Adams will share his take in just a tick. Back in 2 minutes.
Pretty cool experience to go and interview him.
GB News Breakfast. every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry also revealed that he wouldn't bring his wife Meghan Markle back to the UK over safety concerns.
Let's talk to royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. I mean, they live in California. I'm not sure what the murder rate is there, but that's a more dangerous place than Britain's at any time of the day. And of course, he compromised his own safety when he said in his book, Spare, his autobiography, which was Ghost Britain, that he'd personally killed 25 Taliban when he was serving with the British Army in Afghanistan. Well, that painted a target for life on the back of himself and his family, which was a very unwise thing for him to do. The other thing which struck me, it was that he invoked the name of the late Queen, saying that he'd had several conversations with his grandmother, and she'd been very, very supportive in his battle. He sees himself, and it's a word he's used, as a dragon slayer against the popular press, the tabloid press, and he's continuing with that. Of course, his brother, Prince William, has settled, but also in the programme was Hugh Grant. Now, Hugh Grant also has settled, as indeed did I, when I received an apology from News Group. I believe in a free and unfettered press. Newspapers are having a bad time at the moment, losing circulation, losing advertising. Young people don't read newspapers. And so I felt that the right thing to do was to settle. I didn't want to take punitive action against newspapers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK. From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday, we are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, it's 11:27. Ben Leo in for Michael Portillo on this Sunday. Hope you're well. Now, the biggest prisoner exchange between Russia and the West since the Cold War era took place on Thursday, with 24 people released in total, according to the US. The White House said 16 prisoners had been freed and made their way back to Europe and the United States. Among them was Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, and in return, 8 Russian prisoners have been released from prisons in the US, Norway, Germany, Poland and Slovenia, including individuals accused of intelligence activities. The children of 2 of the prisoners also returned to Russia. So is this a sign of improved bilateral relations, or maybe just another trick of President Putin's, as it's been reported that Russia has said the freed US prisoners should go into witness protection? Sounds pretty threatening. To discuss this, I'm joined now by military historian Peter Caddick-Adams. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Ben.
Thanks for joining us. Was that a veiled threat from Vladimir Putin there, talking about witness protection?
Well, I mean, it's no business of him whether they do or they don't, but it's a reminder that he has a very long arm, and, of course, all the 8 people who've gone back to Russia a lot of them were certified killers and spies, so it doesn't mean they can't do the same all over again. And it does mean that we need to be looking over our shoulders, because his men, his people, are all over the world sending stuff back. And some of them were... the one in Berlin was convicted of murder. He was a trained assassin.
And he was released?
And he was released.
Wow, OK. So what does it say for relations between the US and Russia? Is this going to improve things going forward?
No, I think it underlines the fact that relations between the two countries are at an all-time low. In the Cold War, you would negotiate direct between Washington, D.C. and Moscow. And the fact that they had to go through a third party, in this case Turkey, illustrates that the two sides really aren't on speaking terms at all. And that would be the case whoever the president was or is.
So even if Donald Trump wins in November, that would still be the case?
I don't think that makes any difference at all for all his talk. What he can't do is influence the mind of Vladimir Putin. And when it comes to spies, the chief spy, of course, head of the old KGB, was Putin himself. So his loyalty is to his own people first, even if they're killers and known to be killers.
In terms of the PR aspect in Russia for Putin doing this, is this a win for the public? Will his supporters think this is a good move?
Well, Putin is claiming a win, although in numerical terms he's only got 8 and the West have got, what have they got, 14. But his 8 are military-trained spies or assassins, whereas most of the Westerners who've been released are journalists, political activists. A lot of Navalny's staff have come out because clearly, if
Alexei Navalny,
the Russian, leader of the opposition, who died in his camp not so long ago.
Is it safe to say he was murdered yet? What's the latest on that? I mean, the Russia story is that he died during hard labour. I mean, was he murdered?
Well, effectively, he was murdered by the regime. It was institutional murder. I'm not sure someone took an axe to his head, but he was starved, he was beaten, he was put on short rations, he lived in a penal colony near the Arctic Circle. So all of that adds up to, institutional murder.
Yeah, it's interesting your point about how Russia has their boys. Putin has his men all over Europe, all over the world. There was I won't reveal it too much because I've not had it confirmed, but I've got some friends in counter-terror units across the UK, and there was a massive warehouse. I won't say where, but it was holding thousands and thousands of Starlink units, Elon Musk's mobile internet units, which allow people to access the World Wide Web, of course, from wherever. And Ukraine, of course, was using a lot of those for their warfare. Very mysteriously, that warehouse burnt to the ground. All the Starlink units were gone. The local fire service said they didn't know what caused it. They never found an explanation. But I've been told by 2 separate sources that it was Russia's men on the ground who did that. Yeah,
I mean, and there are mysterious fires happening all over the West, and not just fires. But, and the assassinations, sadly, will continue. And that's irrespective of hacking and cyber attacks. And one of the guys who's gone back to Moscow is what we would call a sort of very advanced cyber criminal stroke hacker, which underlines just how close that cyber crime is with the official Russian state. These aren't rogue criminals who are trying to, say, attack the NHS or wherever it is and gain money. They're there to cause disruption to the advantage of the Russian state in one way or another. So the swap underlines 2 things. The state of relations between East and West is lower than it's ever been.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
Well, we are where we are. There's I can remember the Cold War, but there's a whole generation who can't. And get very scared about this.
Before my time.
Yeah, but we lived through it. And it didn't end in nuclear obliteration. So, and at the moment, there's nothing to suggest that we're going in any other direction than the same sort of direction of the Cold War, which is a standoff between the 2 different sides.
Great. Some upbeat Sunday news for you. So, in terms of the Ukraine-Russia war, do you ever see that? I mean, when do you see that coming to an end? Are we going to be closer maybe this year, maybe with the introduction of Donald Trump again in the White House? Or how long is this going to drag on for?
I don't think it matters who is in the White House, because they cannot dictate to Kiev when and how to surrender. And the Ukrainians have invested so much blood and treasure in their own defence. They're not going to suddenly roll over and accept the diktat of a third party to trade their territory or anything else. So that is going to go on for as long as it goes on. I mean, if we're talking in terms of triggers, it might be Putin's death. But, I mean, we have to roll up our sleeves and understand that we're in for the long haul.
Years.
For years, and it makes far more for the sense for the West to invest in writing down Russia via Ukraine than to wait for Ukraine to fall and then to have to deal with the Russians down the road, because believe you me, we will have to.
I guess that touches on the debate that's raging here and in the US about the continual funding of Ukraine. Is it just a bottomless pit of taxpayer money until the job's done? I mean, when does it...
Well, it's not a bottomless pit of taxpayer money. It's extraordinarily good training for British service personnel who are training their Ukrainian brethren. They really like doing it. And, of course, it's not a one-way trade, because the most experienced soldiers in the world at the moment are the Ukrainians, whether it's the Ukrainian Navy, whether it's the Ukrainian Air Force, and certainly the Ukrainian Army. So they're coming over to Western countries and getting trained on new weapon systems, but they're bringing all their know-how. And that's upgrading us in terms of technology and thinking in a way that we wouldn't have had before. So, I mean, in the immediate future, this is great for the NATO nations.
Well, yeah, but just playing devil's advocate, the British public would say maybe not so great for the taxpayer. You mentioned about this ending possibly with the death of Vladimir Putin. How would that look like internally from a Ukrainian hit? How would that happen?
Well, no one is trying to assassinate Vladimir Putin, because there are lots of strange actors in Russia today who are infinitely worse. And if you had a sudden unexpected power struggle in Moscow, you might end up with someone who's infinitely worse. Putin had shown no inclination to press the nuclear button, for example, despite many threats. But he might be succeeded by someone, a rogue general or an oligarch, who might not have that kind of restraint. So for the moment, however vicious and autocratic Putin is, he's better than some who might take his place. So this will play out for as long as it plays out.
OK, fascinating and slightly concerning as well for the safety of the world. But thank you, Peter Caddick-Adams, military historian. Appreciate your presence this morning. Right, plenty more to come on the show, including the latest from the world of theatre. And next, I'm going to be speaking to an Israeli government spokesman on everything that's been going on in the Middle East, including overnight the stabbing of 2 Israelis from a Palestinian knifeman during rush hour. This is Ben Leo covering for Michael Portillo on GB News on Sunday. Back in a sec.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, today most of us should see some sunshine, but that's not quite the case for all of us. Northern Ireland seeing quite a wet start with some cloud here. That rain also moving into parts of Western Scotland, maybe at times Cumbria too. But away from this zone, it should be largely dry. Best of sunshine will be across the south. And in the sunshine, feeling pleasant enough, highs reaching around 21 to 23 degrees. But under the cloud, in the wind and rain across Northern Ireland, I think feeling fairly disappointing for the time of year. So as we move into the evening, it's going to be a fine end to the day, really, across southern parts of the country. Some late spells of sunshine to enjoy here. And again, in the sunshine, I think it still will feel fairly warm. But as we move further north, we start to bump up into this area of cloud and rain. The rain quite heavy for a time across Northern Ireland. Some rain also moving into parts of Cumbria and Western Scotland, where the far east of Scotland may well just see some late spells of sunshine, but this rain will push its way eastwards as we go through the course of the night. So quite a wet night to come across the northern half of the UK. That rain actually intensifying as we go through the course of the night across Western Scotland. A warning will come in force during Monday here, because there could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads, so there is a risk of some disruption. Further south, it's a fairly quiet night with some clearing skies and temperatures falling down to mid-teens, maybe down to the low double figures across the north. So we start Monday off, which is a bank holiday across Scotland, on a fairly wet note here. Also some further rain for Northern Ireland too. But further south, best of sunshine will be across the eastern half of England. Further west, there'll be a bit more in the way of cloud in the sky. But where we do see the sunshine, it's going to be feeling fairly hot. Temperatures potentially reaching 27 or 28 degrees down towards the southeast.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy. is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back and good morning to you. It's 11:40. Ben Leo covering for Michael Portillo this Sunday. Hope you've had a nice weekend. The weather's been good enough, hasn't it? Some emails that have been flying in so far. Kathleen, good morning to you. You say, Ben, your guest Hillary dismisses Donald Trump. Has it ever crossed her mind that he's smart enough to understand that his communication skills are what are needed when campaigning? Yeah, I made the point to Hillary. I said, whether you like Donald Trump or not, or people like Meghan Markle even, you can't deny that they're quite intelligent, sharp people because they wouldn't be in the position they're in otherwise. Right, let's move on. I'm delighted now to be welcomed by the man from the Daily Express, Stefan Kiriasis, who's going to tell us all about... Apologies, I'm being shouted at in my ear because we're going now to the Middle East. Stefan, on standby, you stay there. Now, the United States has sent warships and fighter jets to the Middle East and advised Americans to leave Lebanon on, quote, any ticket available amid fresh fears of a conflict. Fears are growing that a war between the Iran-Hezbollah axis and Israel could soon break out following the assassination of Hamas political leader in Tehran. Britain and the United States urged citizens in Lebanon to leave immediately, and 2 people have been killed and 3 others were seriously injured after being stabbed by a Palestinian attacker in the centre of Israel. The stabbings took place during morning rush hour in the city of Holon, just outside Tel Aviv, and the other victims were 2 senior citizens and a young man. Israeli authorities say the suspect was shot dead by police. I'm joined now by Israeli government spokesman David Mencer. Good morning to you, David. Thank you for joining us. First of all, what's the latest on this stabbing during rush hour, please? What's the detail?
Exactly as you said, 2 of our citizens, pensioners, were stabbed to death by a Palestinian terrorist. Police, with their quick action, although the terrorist tried to move quite quickly around the city of Holon, so each of the attacks was 500 metres apart from the other, police managed to neutralise the terrorist. But no matter where these terrorists come from, we're obviously on high alert at the moment. We've been on high alert, to be frank, for the last 76 years since this country was established as a homeland for the Jewish people, but obviously with a 3,000-year history. This threat we face right now, it's an existential threat, Ben. It means that the terrorists, Iranian-backed terrorists, are trying to destroy this country. We won't let that happen. Our allies in the US and in the UK as well are standing by us, we believe, and we will see these terrorists down. We will see Iran down as well.
Yes, President Joe Biden has spoken in recent hours saying that he hopes Iran will back down from threats of retaliation after the killing of Hamas's top leader in Iran. What's your response to Joe Biden? Is Israel listening to the US any more than Joe Biden?
Of course, the US is our closest ally. We've been side by side, shoulder to shoulder for decades and decades. The Prime Minister has known President Biden for 40 years now. They're our closest ally in the world. And I tell you why that is, Ben, and it applies to the UK as well, because this Iranian threat that we face, we're only a stopgap, we here in Israel. They want to destroy us, but we're only a stopgap on the way to you. In the UK. They're trying to destroy the UK, but we're in their way on that journey. So we're standing up to them here, and it's the responsibility of all civilized nations, democracies around the world, free nations, to stand up to this terrorist outrage. You know, it's an Islamic fascist-style dictatorship they have in Iran. They say it quite openly that they wish to destroy this country, and the experience has taught the Jewish people that, you know, when a dictator says that they wish to wipe Jewish people off the face of the earth, we believe them. Many other countries don't believe them. We do believe them, which is why we are going to defend ourselves and, if necessary, take the offensive.
And your Iron Dome was in action overnight because around 30 rockets were fired into, was it into Galilee, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. I happened to be up north over the weekend and I heard the booms for myself. The amazing, miraculous Iron Dome took out many of those threats towards us. But we know that Hezbollah is a formidable enemy. They killed 12 of our youngsters. They weren't Jewish, they were Druze. But the Druze people are very much in our hearts. We love them dearly. They're honoured citizens of this country. And we have a responsibility, the same way that UK has. We have a responsibility to defend ourselves. That's been mandated by our people. It's the government's primary responsibility, and that is precisely what we will do from wherever the Iranian proxies attack us, and we believe it's a seven-fronted war from Iran. We're taking them out one by one, slowly, assuredly, decisively, with intelligence. We know how to defend ourselves, and if necessary, we know how to take the offence in ways which our enemies have not seen yet.
Yes, thank you for correcting me on that. It was, of course, I said at the top of the show, it was 12 Israelis who had been killed, and some viewers did email in to correct me, so thank you for clarifying that. What do you make, please, of Sir Keir Starmer, who's been accused of worsening anti-Semitism by threatening an arms embargo on your country?
So, look, Iran is our enemy, but let's be under no doubt. It's the UK's enemy as well. And I think Sir Keir knows that. We consider the UK as an ally in this battle. It's very important that we're successful here because we're only a stopgap. They're after us. But that's only because we're in their neighbourhood. They consider anyone who is doesn't buy into their distorted view of Islam as infidels. They say this very, very clearly. We're in the way of them because we're local, but they're only on the way over to you in the UK, which is why we must be successful here. We've got a responsibility to see down these terrorists, these Islamo-fascists. Lots of people in the UK, I feel, don't understand this threat from Iran, but I think now that the Prime Minister has taken office, he will understand. We're side by side in this battle. I think the overwhelming majority of GB News viewers and also of people in the UK understand this threat that we're facing. You know, appeasement doesn't work. Trying to appease these Islamo-fascists doesn't work. It just makes it worse, which means we have to stand up to them and we have to defeat them.
When is your operation in Palestine and Gaza going to end? Because we see, I mean, you say people in the UK understand your position, but there's protests, or have been in recent months, every other Saturday in London, lots of it anti-Semitic indeed, but there are genuine concerns about the number of people dying on both sides. When is this going to end, if ever?
So look, the Prime Minister's made clear that there were 24 battalions of Hamas in Gaza. We've smashed all of them, but those fragments are respreading in different places around Gaza. But we are taking them out slowly, assuredly, with intelligence. We're taking them out one by one, and we are being successful. And you can see that by the response of Hamas, or the lack of response by Hamas. I tell you what works with Hamas. It's harsh military pressure. That's what we're doing. But we made clear that the intensive part of this operation is coming to an end. We want Gazans to run their own lives now. We want Gazans to be responsible for themselves, not Hamas that is trying to destroy us, and not other Gazans that wish to destroy us, but Gazans who wish to live in peace with us, together with friendly Arab nations. We want them to get involved as well, to give a better future for Gazans and also for us Israelis. OK,
David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman, thank you for joining us this morning. Much appreciated.
Good to be.
Still ahead, it's nearly time to take to the stage with Stefan Kyriasis to hear about the latest from the West End. I'll be back in just a few ticks.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One local cricket team was made up entirely of one family. The Jollens.
The Newmarket midweek seconds played Thurlow and Old Mill Greenian seconds, captained by, here we go, James Jolland. He played alongside family members Henry, Freddie, George, Jack, Archie, Ryan, Brandon and Daniel. even if slightly controversial, one of the umpires was a Jolland to Stephen the umpire.
Yes, well, the Jolland family mostly live in Wickhambrook in Suffolk and have played for 4 years for Dullingham Village team before it merged with Newmarket. So that's the entire backstory. We're delighted to be joined now by Captain James Jolland and teammate and brother Nick Jolland. Really good to see you both this morning. This is incredible. How did you get the entire family involved in cricket?
Well, we started the club about 3 years ago, and it was more friends and family. But then it had this opportunity of this week to get everyone involved, because everyone was back and they all play cricket, various levels, and the youngest being 12, George. And we're all available, so we thought 1 week we'd do the whole team.
You booted the friends out for 1 week only?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They come and watched. They supported us.
How did the other team feel about having an umpire with related ties?
Well, the captain of the furlough is one of our friends. We do know him, so he was fine with it, and there was no controversial decisions at all.
I think it's a fantastic strategy.
No, yeah.
You could plant somebody.
That's the way
in a position of authority. It's a great idea.
Oh, look, here's the scorecard we can see on the screen with all of your names on there. Some fantastic English names on there. How does it get between the family members? Is it very, very competitive between you all?
As you get older, you work on that, don't you? And you keep that competitiveness out of it. And it's really to play with your sons. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely
We've
thing
all
to
got
do.
sons in it. That's why we do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Stefan Kyriasis is here now to finally, after prematurely introducing you in the last segment, you're here with your box of musical tricks. What's going on in the world of theatre, Stefan?
Well, first of all is The Years, which is Annie Ernaux's 2008. It's a memoir, but it's been described as a collective autobiography. So it's one woman's life, filtered kind of dreamlike through recollection, but also what's happening in the whole world around her. 5 actresses playing the role, and we've got a clip of some of them talking about it to give you a little bit of an idea what it's all about.
I'm Harmony Rose Bremner.
I'm Anjali Mohindra.
I'm Romola Gary.
I'm Gina McKee.
I'm Deborah Findlay.
And I'm playing Annie.
I think it's one of the main reasons for me wanting to be part of this was to have the opportunity to sort of share a role with the other actors.
It's really beautiful to embrace the differences of all of our different layers that we bring to the character.
I don't have to do any backstory because I've got it all here.
The Years is based on Annie Ernaux's Nobel Prize-winning book. She treats every element of her life with forensic, documentary eye.
What I loved about the book, and also Alina's adaptation, is that there's just so much room for feeling.
You can say.
So there's an abortion scene in this, which apparently has, what, trigger warnings?
There's trigger warnings, which is happening more and more in theatre, and I have very mixed feelings about this. Apparently, some men have been fainting or needing to leave the theatre. Yes, there's an abortion. There is an abortion scene. There's also a very unwelcome, kind of coercive sexual scene when she's a younger woman. So each of these 5 actresses play her at different stages, and the Romola Gary, who's in the middle as the kind of young woman, goes through a backstreet abortion, because we go from 1941 to 2006, so it was still illegal, still shameful, and it's graphic, but it's graphic in the sense that she monologues, she describes it, and sort of enacts it on stage, but it's not graphically done in front of you. There's a little bit of kind of fake blood, but it's actually, I thought, beautifully, honestly. The whole idea is to get very, very raw back to what is a person, what is a woman, what does someone go through? And it's also all different things that someone goes through in her life. So she has this horrific experience, but she also, there's the practicalities of just dealing with it. What do you do with it? And then there's this incredible sense, these 5 actresses you saw couldn't look more different race, different accents, different ages. They're playing the same character. And they're all around all the time on the stage and sometimes playing secondary roles. Later on, they play the men in sex scenes with the character that's playing the woman at the time. And it's beautifully done. After that horrific scene, two of them come in and almost wash her down. It's almost slightly religious, the way that they're cleansing her. They're always watching each other, supporting. And so slowly, this is the sort of thing that often I hate, this type of theatre, you know, bare stage, concept, high concept. They're just sheets hanging that have kind of words daubed on them or get turned into a baby or whatever it might be. But yet somehow it builds this incredible magic. 2 hours, no interval, which again can be long.
Yeah.
And it's not. It goes by and it's a very normal woman's life. All my female friends have been through, unsettlingly, lots of these experiences. It's what women experience, but it's honestly, truthfully done.
And just briefly, these trigger warnings, how are they? I mean, how are they delivered? Is it someone on stage saying, "Just beware that something's coming up"? How's it delivered?
It's always on the website, and often on sort of when you get your tickets and everything like that. I believe the trigger warnings are valid, and I have, you know, female friends that wouldn't go and see it for some of the issues.
Right.
But equally, I think some of the audience reactions have been overreacting, especially from men.
People fainting.
It's the male gaze in this. This is a very honest, truthful experience, and also by the end, it's dreamlike, wonderful, magical. It's been described as one life contains multitudes, and it's not a female-only story. It's life. It's a human story.
Great.
I found it beautiful. It's on at the Almeida until August the 31st, and I think it's extraordinary. Beautiful, beautiful show, and I recommend it.
Great.
Superb.
Good stuff. We've got 1 minute left, so what else have you got in your
We've got
bag?
Chorus Line, which I guess we've got some pictures of, and it's the reverse. It's actually the concept of a multitude. It's the chorus, the people auditioning for a 1975 New York show, very famous musical that we all know. Big numbers, like One, Singular Sensation, all of that. This is up at Sadler's Wells, but it's also on a UK tour until October the 5th. It's spectacular. I mean, look at that. It's spectacularly done. I have to say, the core, the cast, actually the main body, there's some incredible performers. They actually, to me, outshine a couple of the leads, which is, I guess, what the show is all about. And then the music is beautiful, the songs are stunning, dancing's great. I absolutely love that. That's on at Sadler's Wells at the moment until August 25th, then on a big national tour. Please go and see it. It's wonderful.
Stefan, thank you. You are a wealth of knowledge, a fountain of knowledge, all things theatre. Thanks, Stefan Kyriasis. That concludes the first hour of the programme, but don't go away. We've got more, including the rich history of British Jews, documented in new artistic artwork.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Hope you're well at home and you've had a great weekend so far. Welcome to the second hour of Sunday with Ben Leo on GB News, covering for Michael Portillo for today. Lots to come this hour, including the BBC. They're paying disgraced Hugh Edwards $300k a year in a pension, which they can't get out of, and Suella Braverman's attack on Labour's mooted tax rises. Capital gains tax, inheritance tax, what's in store for us come the autumn budget. Plus more of my Eric Trump interview to come as well. Elsewhere, a 9-storey high mural has been erected on an arts and culture centre in northwest London to celebrate London's liveliest Jewish stories, and it features some of the most famous Jews to have lived and worked in the capital. I'll be joined by the artist himself, Leon Fenster, to delve into the history behind his unique artwork. And also, a recent strategic move by the US has significantly impacted the Royal Navy's operational capacity, raising concerns for future strength and security of the UK's maritime defence capabilities. Major Chip Chapman will be here to share his thoughts shortly. And finally, we'll be off to enjoy a taste of the Caribbean, as we'll be joined by the founders of a very tasty Caribbean-focused festival that's currently touring the UK. All of that ahead, but first, your news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Ben. 1 minute past 12, our top stories this hour. Police warn further violence is likely after at least 90 people were arrested yesterday as protests took place across England and Northern Ireland. Many towns and cities saw clashes between anti-immigration demonstrators and counter-protesters, with police officers attacked and injured. It comes after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack at a dance club in Southport on Monday. Among the arrests, 14 were made in Bristol, 11 in Liverpool, 20 in Lancashire, amid reports of looting and the setting of fires. Speaking earlier on GB News, former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley didn't mince his words.
No matter what somebody's concerns are, if you pick up a brick or you pick up a bottle and you try at a police officer, you are an idiot. End of story. And unfortunately, we faced yet another evening of violence when more police officers were injured. Something quite dramatic is going to have to happen here, because I see no sign at the moment of this unrest diminishing. In fact, I see it escalating and spreading.
A supermarket owner in Belfast says his business has been reduced to ashes after it was targeted during disorder in the city. Bashir said Muslim businesses were deliberately targeted and is criticising police for their response to the violence. This morning, a clean-up operation was underway in the Donegal Road area following last night's unrest, which lasted for several hours. Bashir was asked if he would be able to reopen.
I don't know. You have to ask the police about that. When they stop all of that, then we will talk about it. All of that's happened, and the police did nothing. I'm telling you the truth. What kind of police? Letting the people to burn everything down. I don't know where is the safety in that, but this is all rubbish.
Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick is urging the Prime Minister to cancel his planned holiday and get a grip on this situation. Many more arrests have been promised in the coming days, as the Prime Minister said the police have his full support to take action against extremists. Robert Jenrick says Sir Keir must stay and tackle this problem.
Well, look, I think it would be completely wrong for the Prime Minister to go on holiday whilst parts of Britain are burning. This is a very serious situation, and we need the Prime Minister to be leading the country. The police need our full support, and they need to know that he is there supporting them, making sure that this situation is being handled from the very top.
Well, former Labour MP and now independent advisor to the government on political violence and disruption, Lord Walney, told us the Prime Minister can work whilst on holiday.
Keir Starmer, you can see, is absolutely on it, as is the Home Secretary and his ministers. And I imagine that even if, formally he is spending some time with his family next week, he will be properly plugged into it. I'm sure that is an issue which they are keeping a roving brief. And prime ministers are never fully off duty, as we know. Even if they've gone somewhere, they take with them the full apparatus to be fully switched on.
So Keir Starmer has accused protesters of attempting to sow hate by intimidating communities. Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe says he needs to listen to the protesters' concerns.
What we need is an honest debate. I don't have a golden bullet for years and years of the elite's mismanagement of our immigration policy, but we've got to have a frank and honest discussion about it. There isn't always a sort of one-line answer to these things. It's extremely complex. But what we can't go on doing is undermining the foundations of this great country and not listening to the people who are now concerned about it, because they're right to be concerned. They've got every right to be concerned about what's happening to their country.
The public is being warned not to approach a suspect after a man was fatally stabbed in North London. 33-year-old Kamar Williams from the Isle of Dogs is believed to be connected to the murder of 53-year-old Derek Neil Thomas on the 30th of July. Mr Thomas died from a stab wound to the chest. The Met Police arrested a 30-year-old woman on Saturday on suspicion of assisting an offender. A 66-year-old woman has died and 3 other people were seriously wounded after being stabbed by a Palestinian attacker in the centre of Israel. The stabbings took place during morning rush hour in the city of Holon, just outside of Tel Aviv. The other victims were 2 senior citizens and a young man. Israeli authorities say the suspect was shot dead by police. In the United States, Florida is bracing itself as Tropical Storm Debbie is expected to turn into a hurricane before hitting landfall this evening. Governor Ron DeSantis has called up 3,000 members of the National Guard and placed most of Florida's cities and counties under emergency orders. Evacuations currently taking place in those places most likely to be affected. The National Hurricane Centre is describing it as a life-threatening situation. Winds are expected to build up to 70 miles per hour with 2-metre-high waves. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Ray. It's 12:07. Welcome back. Ben Leo in for Michael Portillo this Sunday. I'm also joined by Matthew Larzer, Chloe Dobbs and Hilary Freeman on my top panel. We were just bopping away to the rather delightful Michael Portillo theme music then, weren't we?
Absolutely.
Lots going on today in the papers. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph, where Suella Braverman, she's back. She says Sir Keir Starmer's war on wealth has well and truly begun. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has been dishonest with the public in order to justify her high tax, high spend agenda. Matthew Larzer, this £20 billion black hole isn't going away, is it?
Well, no, it's not going away, and it's going to have to be filled, which is why you've seen Rachel having to take tough decisions this week. I mean, sadly, with the tragic events and the awful follow-up that we've had this week, the fact that the winter fuel allowance is going to be taken away from the majority of pensioners hasn't had perhaps the political storm it would otherwise have had. And so I think we've got tax rises to come in the autumn. So the big question over the summer for Labour is what taxes is it going to rise, who's it going to hit, who's going to have to share the burden?
Well, let me tell you what it's going to be. Capital gains tax.
I think you're right.
Inheritance tax. Aspiration nation, no more. Anyone who wants to risk making money in stocks, shares, assets or houses, don't bother, because Labour don't want you to do it. Chloe Dobbs.
Yeah, and as Suella Braverman rightly pointed out, this is a time in our economy where we need people to have incentives to work and to become productive and to buy a home and want to move up the ladder, and when you bring in taxes like this, you don't really help that. I think the thing that really frustrates me about this is it just really exposes the hypocrisy of Labour. They've told us for so long, oh, you know, it's just those evil Tories that tell lies and make false promises. But Labour are showing themselves to be exactly the same. They're completely dishonest in their election campaign. Lars is probably shaking his head.
My entire vision today is Matthew Larser perched behind Chloe Dobbs, scowling and shaking his head.
I mean, there is just no excuse for not knowing about this 20 billion black hole. She was the shadow chancellor. It was her job to look at the country's finances.
Absolutely clear that, for example, they were actually paying for asylum seekers out of the reserve, which is meant to be kept there for emergencies, and that was hidden. Yes, of course, some of it was clear before the election, but a lot of it wasn't.
But Hillary, Rachel Reeves gave an interview to the Financial Times weeks before the election. I've been banging on about it all week. She said, I can't just turn up to the Treasury on day one and say, oh, no, there's no money, there's a bigger mess than we feared, because they've got the OBR now. And she said, I quote, you don't need to win an election to find that out. Was she lying?
Look, I don't think she was lying. I think it's patently obvious that the economy is in a total mess before Labour took over, and that they were going to have to make some really, really tough decisions.
Hang on, it wasn't that bad. The interest rates have come down, inflation's falling, the cost of living.
The taxes were at a 70-year high.
Well, they're going to be higher now.
To pay for the black hole.
Which they knew was coming.
I mean, look how much money was wasted on the Rwanda policy. I mean... Yeah.
But they knew about that. That's the point, Matthew Larser. They knew about this thing.
Yeah, some of it was known, but there were basically some creative accounting going on because the Tories were paying for promises out of the reserve, which should be kept for emergencies. But also there were things like, I mean, again, it's not just the winter fuel allowance that hasn't got attention. Labour government has actually had to put the hospital building programme on hold because all those shiny hospitals that Boris promised, they never. It's not that literally the money was never accounted for. It was just. In the wind, which is nonsense.
Talking of dubious accounting, in the wake of the Hugh Edwards scandal, I mean, he pled guilty, of course, to horrific paedophile crimes. Despite that, he is going to be bagging a £300k a year pension because apparently, I mean, Tim Davies not said this verbatim, but he said, we can't do anything about it. And apparently it's because there's no morality clauses in the BBC's contracts with their stars. So despite all he's done, and despite the fact he may get up to a 10-year jail sentence, he's still going to be bagging £300,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, I'm in the BBC pension scheme, and it's actually a funded pension scheme, so it's separate from the BBC. It's not paid for out of the current licence fee. Obviously, for current employees, they put money in, but it's not like a lot of the state pension schemes where it's just paid for out of current taxes. It's actually, you know, the investments, it's separated out. I think it would be hard for them to kick him out of it, but it surely sticks in the throat. So
how long were you at the BBC?
For 12, 13 years.
Did you have a morality clause?
I don't remember there being one, but I certainly wasn't.
You'd be in trouble if there was, Matthew.
My pension pot is a lot smaller than Hugh Edwards's and the boss classes.
Chloe Dobbs, at a time when the BBC are reportedly chasing cancer patients for unpaid licence fees and so on, how does this stick with you?
It doesn't sit with me well. I mean, I sympathise with them in that if they've got a legal contract and there's nothing they can do to change it, then that is what it is. But I really don't think that this whole Hugh Edwards scandal is a good look for the BBC, especially when he's not just being paid this 300 grand, he was being paid his 470k salary whilst he wasn't working since November, just sat doing nothing.
But again, it's the law. You can't break the law just because somebody is morally dubious.
But it's not a good look when
it's not.
The BBC is paid for by licence fee, which people were already very upset about. And if they think that taking down the odd episode off iPlayer that Hugh Edwards appears in is going to fix their reputation, I'm sorry, but it's just not going to do it.
I was wondering about that. I mean, in the future, when people look back at the archives to see when the Queen died, is there going to be nothing from the BBC?
Well, there's this talk now that apparently they'll go back and scrub his voice from the Queen's funeral and so. I think it's just completely ridiculous. It's completely silly.
His voice is on everything. I mean, he was such a huge broadcaster. He announced, you know, pretty much every major event.
We can't just erase history by...
Maybe it's going to have to be like Northern Ireland in the 80s where they got somebody to...
Jerry Adams.
Yes.
I mean, I know you're going to be talking shortly about this new mural, it's a hard word to say, to Jewish Londoners. I don't know if you've seen, but there was a Hugh Edwards mural on the side of a building in his hometown in Carmarthenshire, and the artist went out and painted over it this week.
Well, he was an alumni of the same journalism course as me, and that seems to have disappeared now from the internet.
Oh, really? Hugh Edwards?
Yes.
So what year was that?
A long time before me, I think.
At university?
Yeah, I did a postgraduate in journalism at Cardiff University.
So were you in the same class, the same year?
No. Oh, God, I'm a lot younger than him. Thank you. I'm very insulted now.
Hugh Edwards looks quite young. How old is he?
He's in his 60s.
Yes.
He looks good. He works out. I mean,
I mean, you know, and actually, what we saw this week with the temporary chairperson who's now stood down at the BBC, who's from what they know as a taffocracy, the Welsh-speaking mafia, as you might say, who run most public institutions in Wales. He was very integrated into that. He was the president of the London Welsh Centre, etc. So it's actually had quite big repercussions in Wales, not just his mural were being painted over.
I think we've got a picture of this mural somewhere. Have we got it? It's in his hometown.
Hometown in Carmarthenshire. I'm not going to try and mispronounce it, but it's now erased from the public view.
I think. Can we get it up here?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
he looks. I mean,
he looks. It's slightly evil in it. I mean, maybe the artist saw the.
Oh God, is that what they've done?
And that's what it is now. Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
And there's a plaque as well. Is that a plaque?
That's a plaque, Cardiff Castle. That's come down. That's been unscrewed. Yeah, that's it. It's gone now as well. So in Wales, the implications. I mean, Hugh was basically Welsh royalty, and he was a Welsh speaker, so he did a lot of stuff on S4, the Welsh broadcaster.
What a fall from grace.
Totally.
But I don't like this erasure of things from history.
No.
It's like you can't change history. So, you know, like it or lump it, you know, this person had this role and you need to learn about them. You know, it's the same with lots of things that are being erased, you know, statues being taken down.
It's at the front of the BBC, on the front of Broadcasting House, there's a statue by Eric Gill, a very controversial sculptor when it was built in the 20s and 30s, who I think is was a pretty abusive of his children. And there are often protests outside saying, take it down. And the BBC kept that sculpture there, it was defaced, has kept it there. So I think it's one thing to take down Hugh Edwards off Children in Need or whatever his videos were, but you can't erase him from the Queen's funeral or the election.
I think it's really silly. I think it's a bit of a red herring, and the more serious point is the pension. Chloe, I know you're having a dig at the BBC saying why did they continue paying him, but in their defence, he was off sick. He was mentally unwell, apparently, according to him and his wife.
Well, he was in hospital where the original...
But they were informed by the police that he had been arrested with some very serious allegations.
Right, but if you'd been arrested for something, would you expect your employer to sack you just upon arrest? I mean, he's not guilty at that point.
No, I think that it's not a good look, him being paid such a huge salary. I think just revealing the fact that he was paid such an insane salary from the licence fee in the first place is quite shocking. I think that what is a more important question is, did the BBC know that dodgy things were going on before we had the police investigations taking place? You know, we've had Jimmy Savile, we've had Philip Schofield. Obviously, that was not BBC, but it just feels like we have a lot of these TV channels where there's dodgy stuff going on, but they just keep it under the carpet to save their reputation,
I think the issue,
even if there are kids in danger as a consequence.
I think the problem the BBC's got is with Hugh, there were the original sets of allegations which were very uncomfortable, unpleasant, but didn't seem to tip into illegality. And because he was a popular person at the BBC, and people just basically didn't think, you know, thought that may be a bit unfortunate, he's having a bit of a breakdown, etc. Then when the further allegations came, the BBC didn't really handle it. No, it was sort of in a confusion about how to handle it. Apparently, they're still paying for. It's been emerged this morning. They're still paying for counselling, for therapy, for a woman who had made accusations against him. And because they didn't handle them properly, they've agreed they paid for her therapy, and that's ongoing.
Well,
so there's more to come. I think more revelations to come.
I think a lot of the time, and it seems like it was the case with Hugh Edwards, that when you've got questions being asked about someone's conduct, they often get brushed aside because, oh, he's such a nice guy. Oh, I know Hugh. He's so lovely when I spoke to him. It couldn't possibly be him. And then it doesn't get dealt with until it's far too late.
You said there's more to come, Matthew. I mean, since his guilty plea on Wednesday, the Sun have just, they're sort of running riot with the stories they've been sitting on. One this morning in the Sun on Sunday shamed Hugh Edwards wooed a young man by sending pictures of himself posing with celebrities, including Dame Mary Berry and Sir Tom Jones. There was another story yesterday in the Sun it was a video clip. A worried parent filmed Hugh Edwards at a Welsh train station who was meeting their son. And there was a story the day before about how Hugh Edwards apparently invited a young BBC producer to his penthouse suite on the day, I think it was the Queen's funeral.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising, is it? I mean, do you remember the grief the Sun got when the story broke? And then it was like, he's ill, you can't say any of this stuff, he's our national treasure. So, of course, they're going to be bringing out all the stories that they've got now.
Yeah, just unloading. Right, let's move on very quickly. Former US President Donald Trump's son, Eric, has accused the US media of bias reporting when it comes to his new rival, Vice President Kamala Harris. Here's what he said to me yesterday when I had a chat with him in Aberdeenshire. To make of all the nonsense online, saying, especially from sort of militant leftists who are saying he wasn't shot, it was shrapnel, you know, rubbish like that.
It's infuriating. It's infuriating. And then you have Google that scrubs the search terms. You type in Trump assassination, it doesn't even come up. You want to talk about a corrupt, awful world where they're trying to hide that because they think somehow that hurts them or benefits somebody else or whatever it may be. It's awfully sick. I mean, when your media is being censored like that, when Google searches are erasing history and propagating revisionist history, the whole world sees it. Everybody in this country sees it. Everybody in the United States sees it.
I did it yesterday. Elon Musk tweeted about the fact if you type in Trump rally into Google, all comes up as Kamala Harris. You know how her reinvigoration from a militant leftist into this god that can't be touched. I saw it myself firsthand.
You know, it's funny. The media was mocking her. They spent the last 4 years mocking her, and then all of a sudden, Biden's forced out, and all of a sudden she walks on water. It's really an amazing thing. And
Matthew Laza, Kamala Harris, is she a threat? And does he have a point there about censorship? I did it myself. I typed in Donald Trump rally into Google, and all that came up was Kamala Harris, massive bounce, massive threat to Donald Trump. Nothing on Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think we shouldn't go looking for conspiracy theories. I mean, certainly, he's got his supporters on social media. Elon Musk is pretty pro-Trump on X/Twitter. Look, I mean, I think it's been an amazing, 10 days, hasn't it? Who'd have thought that the race would be transformed, that the Kamala Harris campaign would raise more in a month, I think, than any campaign has ever raised before. So at the very least, it's healthy for democracy because it's now a genuine fight. I mean, when Biden was still the candidate, it was clearly very unfortunate and it was going to be a very lopsided fight. Now, at least it's two very different politicians are going to go for it big time before November.
Chloe, is the Kamala bounce genuine?
What do you think she's going to...
Bounce in the polls?
Bounce in the polls. I think that it makes things a bit harder for Trump, for sure. I think that she is a stronger candidate for Biden in that Biden just became an absolute laughingstock, falling over, trying to walk upstairs and walk off stage. But I don't think that she has a great record. She was involved in turning California into a drug-fueled hellhole. She was given the brief to deal with the southern border, and look how that went. They just opened the gates and let everyone come in, and that's only going to continue if you stick with Kamala Harris. So I don't think that she's a strong candidate, but there's plenty to play for and plenty to change, so we'll see what happens.
Hillary?
Can I just say, I just put Donald Trump rally into Google, and all I've got is stuff about Donald Trump rallies.
Yeah, I mean, I actually recorded it. I have proof because I recorded it on my phone.
They probably changed the algorithm after the backlash.
Maybe.
Elon Musk posted on X, he posted a screenshot showing all the big donors to the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah.
And Google and most of the people who control what we see online are all huge donors to the Democrat campaign. So it's no surprise that they are changing what you see when you type stuff.
Well, I don't know. I don't believe in conspiracy theories.
I'll show you this in the break. Unfortunately, the viewers and the listeners can't see this, but I'll show you this screen record I did yesterday ahead of speaking to Eric Trump. I typed in Donald Trump rally, and all that came up was Kamala Harris. Here you go. You can have a look at this in the break.
OK.
What's extraordinary at Donald Trump's rallies is his speeches last for 90 minutes. And they're basically unscripted. As somebody who writes speeches when I'm not talking on GB News, just extraordinary. I'd get shot if I wrote a speech for 90 minutes.
Well, maybe that's why people like Hillary think he's a bit of a nutter and just, goes off on a tangent, because he doesn't use auto-cue like Joe Biden. He just, he...
Well, it's just like, it's stream of consciousness nonsense.
Yeah, it is. You certainly wouldn't get away with it in British politics. Nobody's going to sit through a 90-minute speech here. OK.
Chloe, Matthew, Hillary, thank you. I'm about to show you that video, so sit tight, don't go away. More to come, including what does a Gollum, Amy Winehouse and Benjamin Disraeli all have in common? Well, artist Leon Fenster will be here to reveal all and share his unique artistic work that's been recently unveiled in the heart of northwest London. We'll be back in 3.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, almost 70% of 18 to 25-year-olds, we don't know whether that's men or women, but they say that women shouldn't breastfeed in public. 19% would even go as far as labelling it disgusting.
Well, only a quarter of Brits say that women shouldn't have to cover up when they're breastfeeding. So clearly there is a big debate here and one to get to the bottom of. And to do so, we're joined by parenting journalist Annette Kellu. Really good to see you this morning, Annette.
Really good to see you.
Why is this stigma still existing in our society?
I think we've got a case here going on of double standards. I don't know about you, but I live near a park, OK? One little hint of sun The men get completely naked. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it. The bodies are out, all different shapes and sizes. So why is it not OK for a woman to feed her baby? You know, we've got this whole thing. They're OK to be naked doing what they want. Why can't a woman just feed her baby? Why is it shameful in 2024? And it's interesting what you say about the 18 to 25-year-olds, because I really want to know, are they men or women? Because I feel like they'd be men.
I was going to say, have you got a hunch? Have you got a suspicion?
Yes, I have. And I think as well, they're thinking of them as sexy time, you know? And I feel like they're not... Well, maybe that's because they're bombarded with images and they see things like that, that they're seeing it in that context. But it's really not. It's feeding the baby. It's simple. Shouldn't be shameful.
But do you think for men it's like they can't see the difference? There's so much porn in society, isn't there, that breasts are sexualised and seen as this sexual object and not actually for their main primary purpose, which is actually feeding a child.
Immediate association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they can't.
And you can't see that they could have two functions.
Absolutely. And to them as well, I feel like they see it, and on the other side of it, they think like, ooh, mummy, and that brings up weird feelings for them, maybe.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK. From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday, we are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 12:26. Ben Leo with you, covering for Michael Portillo just for today. Now, a new 9-storey high North London mural has been unveiled in the past week, celebrating Jewish life in the capital. So, walking down the Finchley Road, you may now encounter Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli held aloft at his bar mitzvah, Brian Epstein giving the Beatles their iconic grey suits, and Solstice Amy Winehouse taking up battle on Cable Street. The new mural comes at a time to celebrate and reflect on what has been a pretty difficult period in London for Jewish people. Reports of anti-Semitism, of course, have hit record highs over the past year, surging after the 7th of October attacks and the Israel-Gaza conflict. The mural's artist, Leon Fenster, joins me now. Good morning, Leon. Good morning. We're going to get some pictures up in a second. I'm looking at the pictures online now. Fantastic. You've got the likes of Sigmund Freud on there and even Anne Widdecombe.
Yes, yes. There will be, probably a lot of surprising additions in this artwork, but don't worry, if you're confused by it, there is a guide that goes along with it. You can scan a QR code when you're there and learn about all of the stories contained within the artwork.
So we've got, some faces are easily recognised. We've got on the right, if you see the full mural, we've got David Baddiel up a ladder marking a tally on a wall. What's that about?
Yes, well, his most famous book was called Jews Don't Count.
Yes.
So if we look what's he doing up the ladder, he's counting. Jews can count, it turns out. I realise that was not the intention of the title. But
and, of course, we've got a tiger and a rabbit in the top right. What's that from?
Yes. So one of my favourite books growing up was When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit by Judith Kerr. So the rabbit that she had to leave behind in Nazi Berlin is sitting on top of the Kinder transport, making its way to rejoin her in London, accompanied by the tiger who came to tea, one of her other creations, kind of accompanying, protecting the rabbit.
So you've definitely put some thought into this, no doubt.
Absolutely.
And the Beatles, of course, make an appearance thanks to their Jewish manager, Brian Epstein.
That's right.
He steered them to their early success and also their look and their style.
Yes. And the look that he gave them was very much influenced by mod fashion, which it has itself Jewish roots. The story goes that the children of Jewish tailors kind of adopted the clothes that their parents were making, and that became this dominant fashion style, and that's what Brian Epstein gave to the Beatles, and thus defined the look of rock and roll for so long.
So it's a massive piece. It's 9 stories high.
It is.
How long did it take you? Talk me through the process of...
Yes.
I mean, and also, what inspired you to come up with it first?
Right. I've always been looking for larger and larger public canvases on which to tell stories. I didn't think I'd find one quite this spectacular. It took a few months to create. It came out of a meeting at JW3, this Jewish community centre. And they asked if I'd like to do some sort of big exhibition. And instead I said, well, how about let's do that wall instead. And, you know, my process is to take a very large sheet of paper and I just pick somewhere to start and start drawing and see what happens. As you approach this artwork, I hope every time you'll find different paths from one thing to the next, much like we do in our dreams. And the process of creating it is also very dreamlike. I'll start with one thing and then I'll find some humorous connection to something else and move to drawing that. Then I'll think of some sort of unknown link to something else and weave that into the original story. So it's a very organic process.
I guess that's quite reflective of most artistic endeavours. I used to write quite a lot, and once you get into the momentum, one thing leads to another, and, you know, the creativity just spurns from there. Even Elizabeth I makes an appearance.
Yes, she does. So this is... OK, so let's give you a little flavour of how things connect it. So Elizabeth I, the whole thing takes place in an imaginary giant theatre based on one of London's largest Yiddish theatres.
Is that her there on screen?
That is her there, yes. And she's sitting in the balcony watching through some binoculars, and she's watching the trial of Rodrigo Lopez, who was a Portuguese doctor, her doctor, who was put on trial for treason, for trying to poison her, found guilty by his rival, who oversaw the court. She clearly thought he was not guilty. It's very clear from the record. So she's looking on displeased.
Hang on, so he was put on trial, but the Queen didn't think he did it?
No, and fascinatingly, she couldn't stop the verdict somehow. But we know that she was displeased with it because she took a long time to sign the death warrant, and in those days, she should have received his whole family's wealth, but she wouldn't receive it. And all she agreed to accept was a single ring. From the collection. We don't know exactly what this means, but there's something going on.
That's extraordinary. You would have thought she had sort of carte blanche over, you know, everything. It's fascinating. So Rodrigo Lopez.
Yes.
That's the story I need to
That's right,
into.
Yes. And
in terms of the actual production of it, how many hours a day were you working on it? What fueled you during that time? Was it just coffee after coffee? How was it?
Actually, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I try. I mean, as soon as I have a story I want to put in there, I start working on that, and I essentially keep going until I can't think what comes next. Then I go back out into the world, I explore, I talk to people, I find some new connections, and then go back into the artwork. It's very much a process of talking to people, like you're doing. Really interviewing people is as much a part of the process as the drawing itself. I'm trying to reveal stories back to people, so I love the challenge of thinking who might come next, like an institution or a community or a social movement or a single family to tell their story. And I essentially want to reveal their story back to them and reveal that within each of these groups, within every person, every family, behind every corner is an entire world of stories, which I can throw up onto the wall.
Amazing. Yeah. So just very briefly, we're running out of time, unfortunately. Anne Widdecombe, what's her involvement in it? Because lots of our viewers will be big fans of Anne Widdecombe.
Right. So she is there, she wasn't herself Jewish, but she's there because she coined the moniker that followed Michael Howard around for much of his career. There's something of the night about him. And, you know, so I sort of humorously put that in there as possibly a line which had something to do with preventing what could have been the first Jewish Prime Minister of the country. Right. But we do have... the only one, Benjamin Disraeli.
Got it.
Although, whether he would accept that, I'm not sure.
Leon, great work. You know, just amazing. It looks brilliant. Where can people see it? If they go down the Finchley Road, where exactly can they find it?
If you're driving north up the Finchley Road, past Finchley and Frognall Station, you can't miss it. 9 stories high. And then the best viewing is to go through the gate, just in front of the mural, and there's a bridge just in front, and that gives you the best view of the artwork.
OK. And any other plans for any other projects, or are you having a bit of a break?
No, I've already got some people presenting potential challenges of worlds to draw so far, and stay tuned for which one comes next.
Keep us updated, please, because this is fascinating. I will. It's great work. Thank you, Leon Fenster. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Right, now, a new US weapons test has led to yet more questions about the wisdom of aircraft carriers being a pillar of Britain's defensive strategy. How might this display of military strength affect the balance of maritime security in the region and the broader strategic relationship between the UK and the US? Well, I'll be joined by Major Chip Chapman to share his thoughts shortly. But first, your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Ben. 33 minutes past 12, our top stories this hour. Police warn further violence is likely after at least 90 people were arrested yesterday as protests took place across England and Northern Ireland. Many towns and cities saw clashes between anti-immigration demonstrators and counter-protesters, with police officers attacked and injured. It comes after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack at a dance club in Southport on Monday. Among the arrests, 14 were made in Bristol, 11 in Liverpool and 20 in Lancashire, amid reports of looting and the setting of fires. Number 10 sources are disputing claims that Sir Keir Starmer is planning a summer getaway on Monday, despite the risk of further unrest. It comes after Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick urged the PM to cancel his trip and get a grip on the situation. Many more arrests have been promised in the coming days, as the Prime Minister said the police have his full support to take action against extremists. The public is being warned not to approach a suspect after a man was fatally stabbed in North London. 33-year-old Kamar Williams from the Isle of Dogs is believed to be connected to the murder of 53-year-old Derek Neil Thomas on the 30th of July. Mr Thomas died from a stab wound to the chest. The Met arrested a 30-year-old woman on Saturday on suspicion of assisting an offender. In the US, Florida is bracing itself as Tropical Storm Debbie is expected to turn into a hurricane before hitting landfall this evening. Governor Ron DeSantis calling up 3,000 National Guard, placing most of Florida's cities and counties under emergency orders. The National Hurricane Center has described it as a life-threatening situation. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. A northwest-southeast split developing over the next 24 hours. Rain across the northwest of the UK. Some heavy bursts developing this evening and overnight across western Scotland. A Met Office warning in force. Quite windy here too. The rain continuing into Monday. Elsewhere, generally dry and turning quite warm and humid into Monday as well. For Sunday afternoon, generally dry across much of England and Wales. Though quite a lot of cloud, best of the sunshine towards the southeast. Cloudier skies further north and west, Northern Ireland, western Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain, which will turn increasingly heavy later. Turning increasingly windy here too. Temperatures struggling with that as 15, 16 Celsius. Cooler further south as well, highs around 22 or 23 degrees. Through this evening time, if we zoom into Scotland, we can see the outbreaks of heavy rain across western parts, and further east it will be drier, some glimmers of brightness from time to time, and that rain also extends into parts of Northern Ireland. A Met Office warning coming into force across western Scotland from 6 p.m. right through the day on Monday too. Brighter skies to end the day across England and Wales, temperatures in the low 20s, so fairly pleasant to end the weekend. Across the northwest, as we head through the evening and overnight, you can see further pulses of heavy rain pushing in from the Atlantic, fairly brisk winds too. Overnight, generally cloudy skies for Wales and the West Country, some rain and drizzle in places. The rain turning heavier across northwest England too, the clearest skies towards the southwest, but with southerly winds we're drawing in quite humid air, so temperatures again mid-teens at their lowest. So a humid start on Monday, wet and windy across the northwest here, outbreaks of heavy rain, Northern Ireland, western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there through the day. Generally elsewhere, bright or sunny spells, but largely dry. And the winds coming in from the south, humid as well. Temperatures lifting towards the mid to high 20s across the east and southeast, fresher further northwest.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome back. It's 12:38. Ben Leo with you this Sunday in for Michael Portillo. Now, the United States has recently executed a strategic move that has significantly disrupted the operational capacity of our Royal Navy. So the Americans' announcement that they have successfully tested a low-cost bomb that can sink ships the size of aircraft carriers could be a threat to our men and women sailing the seas. This unexpected development has raised alarms about the future of the UK's maritime defence capabilities, suggesting a potential weakening of our naval power. The implications of the move extend well beyond the immediate military consequences, of course, and it's prompted questions about the broader impact on regional maritime security and, of course, the strategic relationship between the UK and the US. So how might this shift in naval dynamics influence global security and international alliances? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Major Chip Chapman. Good afternoon, Chip. So, long story short, the US have developed this new bomb which could sink our aircraft carriers and, what, we're stuffed, are we?
Well, the Americans are not going to sink our aircraft carriers because they are our allies. So the first thing is it was what we call a SINK-X, an exercise against the ship, which you do for two reasons, either to show the lethality of a new weapon system that you're developing or the survivability. So those are the two metrics that you use. Now, of course, to do that, you set the parameters of the test. So what they're not doing is the active and passive defence which you would have in a real war situation. So you want to put the Americans aside and say, what is the capability of a potential adversary?
Yes.
Where we would go. Now, actually, the Chinese, who are one of the potential adversaries if we get involved in a Pacific war, and we talk about a thing called the Davison window, which is the window of opportunity for an invasion of Taiwan beginning in 2027. They, since 1991, have had a suite of missiles, particularly an anti-ship ballistic missile called the Dongfang 21D, which has a range of 1,500 kilometres, 1,100 miles, and they think that that could sink American ships. Now, of course, the active and passive measures probably mean that they won't. Now, after the Ukrainians sank the Moskva,
yes,
we used to say that there are only two types of ships. There are submarines and there are targets. Now, indeed, that sounds frivolous, but again, in the Second World War, 60 U-boats went into the Mediterranean, 59 were sunk and only one came out. Ships will get sunk. But if you've got the right framework of destroyers and frigates, active and passive measures around them, it doesn't mean it will happen. We have not had a peer or near-peer adversary to test that, really. The nearest was the Falklands War in 1982.
Chip, it's a really sunny day outside. It's glorious. But inside, it's feeling a bit gloomy because I had a military historian on previously talking about how we're entering an era that's going to be worse than the Cold War, relations with Russia, completely in the gutter. And now we've got this development. And, of course, you were saying to me off-air that our number of ships, frigates, is continuing to dwindle. That's despite calls from the likes of Tory Baroness Neville Jones, who's saying that we need more and more and more.
Yeah, and I think this is really the big issue. It's OK having aircraft carriers, but you need the escorts to go with them. Now, Lord Robertson is going to be one of the guys involved in the Defence Review. He was the Defence Secretary at the end of the century. At the time that he was Defence Secretary, he talked about the need for 20 frigates and 12 destroyers. We currently have 6 destroyers. The original bid was for 12. We've got 6. And the 20 frigates have come down to 13, of which really they can, there's 9, probably going down to 7, which we can operationally generate 3 or 4. So it is that which is kind of broken. And if you look at the vital tasks for the UK, 40% of our food comes from overseas. In terms of food security and the fact that we're an island, it's protecting the North Atlantic, protecting the undersea infrastructure in terms of energy, digital infrastructure, so we can all communicate. Those are the key things. The Royal Navy, in my view, even though I'm an Army officer, needs to grow.
So are we defenceless in Britain when it comes to the global picture?
No, we're not, because, of course, we're part of an alliance. An alliance has grown. NATO's grown from 30 to 32 nations with the addition of Finland and Sweden. The best thing we can do is support Ukraine to ensure they prevail. That would be a triggering moment probably for Russia to ensure that they don't become a threat in the future. Then you're left potentially with China. We'll see what happens there. To do amphibious operations across 120 miles straight is a very complex operation.
Chip, I might sound a bit naive here, right? But we used to rule the waves. We conquered the world. And now it just feels like, despite having the backing of NATO, it just kind of feels like we're dwindling away in the corner of Europe and not really armed to the teeth like we should be. Is that a fair thing to say, or am I just being a bit simplistic?
Well, we are a medium-ranked power. We're no longer a front-ranked power. Certainly the Americans have said that in terms of land warfare, we're no longer a front-ranked nation. However, our defence budget is the 6th largest in the world. So are we getting a bang for our buck? And the real dilemma in the defence review is, do we go for the Euro-Atlantic aspect? That is, that if European warfare and Russia is the problem, do we put all our eggs in that basket? Or are we still a global power and want to rule the waves by going out to the Pacific in terms of HMS Queen? HMS Prince of Wales is going next year to the Indo-Pacific. You can't have both with the size of the budget we have.
No. Well, Sir Keir Starmer and Labour, of course, they are doing this strategic defence review. They've promised to bump up the defence budget. When they do that, what do you think they'll need to identify as the areas of needing a bolster in money?
Well, my view is that the key things are preservation of the North Atlantic, so you need more ships to ensure that the Russians can't interdict that. The second one is you need integrated air and missile defence, so that's weak in the UK. And indeed, those 6 Type 45 destroyers, as I mentioned, you really got a choice there. It's either protect carriers or protect London. And with 6, we haven't got much. So the ground-based air defence is rather missing, although within a NATO rubric, that's less than you think. Those are the 2 key areas, of course, with the nuclear deterrent on top of that. And there are 4 new dreadnought ships being built.
So you reckon it's the Navy that really needs the bulk of this new money?
It's the Navy and the Air Force. It's terrible for me, again, as an Army officer to say this, but that's where our vital interest in terms of our position geographically lies.
Yeah, but I've got some mates in the Navy, so I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear that you are backing them to get a bit of a budget boost. But, of course, in the Army as well, we need numbers as well. We need troops. There's a recruitment crisis, no?
Yeah, and that really depends, again, what you want to do in the defence budget. We used to have the British Army of the Rhine when, for example, there were about 120,000 troops with 3 divisions in Germany during the Cold War. Do we want to recreate that in terms of a British Army on the Vistula somewhere in Poland and in Estonia? Now, we do have a enhanced forward presence in Estonia with a battle group. In the last NATO summit, we actually went towards a brigade, let's say going from 1,000 troops to 4,000 troops. They are not forward deployed because we haven't got enough troops of the type armoured and armoured infantry to sustain that. So they're allocated, not deployed. That shows the weakness, really, in the structural problem in the British Army. Got it.
Fascinating. Big challenges ahead on the global scale, indeed. I was watching, actually, Chip, on Netflix the other day, a documentary on the Iranian embassy siege. It reminded me how the SAS, still, do you reckon still the most feared special forces in the world, the most skilled, the most competent?
I think so. They're too small, and of course I know 5,000 people who are on that balcony.
Really? Yeah, right. Major Ship Chapman, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon. Right, after the break, we'll be savouring a taste of the Caribbean. Back in 2.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The son, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
For our Taste of Britain today, we're joined by Damien McLean, one of the founders of the Taste of Caribbean Food and Drink Festival, which is, Damien, Europe's largest dedicated to Caribbean food, right?
Yeah, it's the largest food and drink festival anywhere in the UK, anywhere in Europe, really, that is just dedicated solely to Caribbean food and drink, yes.
So, for people that don't know, give us some staple Caribbean dishes. Jerk chicken, I guess, is the...
Okay, yes, so the one that everybody is kind of familiar with is jerk chicken, because people have gone to Jamaica or they've gone to, like, Notting Hill Carnival. So most people will be familiar with jerk chicken, but there are so many Caribbean dishes. So you've got curry goat, you've got ackee and saltfish, you've got rotis, you've got doubles, you've just got so much. And then there's so many of the Caribbean islands that are probably not as well known as somewhere like Jamaica or Barbados. Places like St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts, and they've all got their staple dishes as well.
So we've got some pictures here from the festival, and there's 15, did you say? 15?
So 15 festivals in this year in 2024, taking place in 10 different cities. So we go on a tour each year, taking Caribbean food, culture and music to lots of different destinations and places that might not always get access to the food and the music and the culture.
So it's the Taste of the Caribbean Festival, that's what it's called. Describe us about what Caribbean food brings to people. I mean, the flavours, what kind of ingredients do you use, the recipes, what does it bring? Why does it bring so much joy to people?
Caribbean food is so intertwined with the culture and the music and the people. The Caribbean is not the most wealthy place in the world. So, you know, being of Jamaican heritage myself, when I was younger, growing up, and I would go back to Jamaica with my family, they couldn't give us much. They couldn't give us, you know, presents and wealth, but the one thing that our family members could always do is feed us. So your most poorest family members would always want to feed you. That's the one thing they could give back to you, that amazing food. So we associate food so much with love, so much with family, so much with our upbringing, and it's one of the main things that we like to really share with the world. It's just amazing food and drink. So at the Food and Drink Festival, that's what it is once again. It's welcoming everybody to the Caribbean. Come and taste the Caribbean, come and celebrate with us. And what we want to do is feed you, because food is the one thing that always brings families together.
We've got some dishes on screen here. What's that, quickly?
Okay, so I didn't even know you were... Okay, so that's fish. So that's probably fried fish. The one before looked like jerk chicken.
What's flying fish? I've Googled Caribbean dishes, and cuckoo and flying fish.
So flying fish is a type of fish that comes from Barbados. That's like a Bayesian dish. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
We've got so many different
What's this
dishes
one here? We've got
and so many different islands. Okay, that one, so that's plantain on the side. It was rice and peas, and it was either probably jerk chicken or jerk pork, that one was.
Nice. Look at the colours. What's that one?
That's definitely jerk chicken, that one there.
I just told you off air, I went to Scotland in the week and I was so hungry, I went on a delivery service and I got jerk chicken, which of course is the OG Caribbean dish.
Yes.
And to be honest, I've never really had it before, but it's so nice.
What did you think? Was it too spicy for you, or do you like spicy food? How did you find it?
Well, let me tell you this. If I get an Indian takeaway, I'll get a korma. So that tells you about
okay, you like it mild.
My spice tolerance.
Yeah.
But it was delicious and it was so filling as well.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you liked it and enjoyed it. That means we need to get you down to the festival.
Exactly. So yeah, when's the next date of your festival?
Okay, so like I said, we've been every week for like the last 10 weeks. Next week, what should I say? This coming Saturday, we're in Stevenage. Then we have a 1 week break. After that, we go to Basingstoke.
What's the website address? Where can people find that?
tasteofcaribbeanuk.com. So like I said, we've got 5 more left. Stevenage, Basingstoke, Ipswich, Southend, and then the grand finale in Wimbledon, London on the 14th of September.
Damien McLean, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
And order some Caribbean grub. That's all from me for today. Michael is back next week. Hope you've had a good weekend. I'll be back next week with Britain's Newsroom. Up next is Dawn Neeson.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. A northwest-southeast split developing over the next 24 hours. Rain across the northwest of the UK. Some heavy bursts developing this evening and overnight across western Scotland. A Met Office warning in force. Quite windy here too. The rain continuing into Monday. Elsewhere generally dry and turning quite warm and humid into Monday as well. For Sunday afternoon, generally dry across much of England and Wales, though quite a lot of cloud, best of the sunshine towards the southeast. Cloudier skies further north and west, Northern Ireland, western Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain, which will turn increasingly heavy later. Turning increasingly windy here too, temperatures struggling with that as 15, 16 Celsius. Cooler further south as well, highs around 22 or 23 degrees. Through this evening time, if we zoom into Scotland, we can see the outbreaks of heavy rain across western parts. And further east, it will be drier, some glimmers of brightness from time to time, and that rain also extends into parts of Northern Ireland. A Met Office warning coming into force across western Scotland from 6 p.m. right through the day on Monday too. Brighter skies to end the day across England and Wales, temperatures in the low 20s, so fairly pleasant to end the weekend. Across the northwest, as we head through the evening and overnight, you can see further pulses of heavy rain pushing in from the Atlantic, fairly brisk winds too. Overnight, generally cloudy skies for Wales and the West Country, some rain and drizzle in places. The rain turning heavier across northwest England too, the clearest skies towards the southwest, but with southerly winds we're drawing in quite humid air, so temperatures again mid-teens at their lowest. So a humid start on Monday, wet and windy across the northwest here, outbreaks of heavy rain, Northern Ireland, western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there through the day. Generally elsewhere, bright or sunny spells, but largely dry. And the winds coming in from the south, humid as well. Temperatures lifting towards the mid to high 20s across the east and southeast, fresher further northwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful